All right, welcome everyone. We have another exciting edition of our weekly AMAs. For those of you who are new to the show, if we can call it, every Wednesday we have a live AMA session where I basically go through questions that were asked on Reddit. If you have a question, make sure to post it in the Reddit thread that we always announce on Twitter, so that your question gets answered during the live stream. Today we had a very exciting live stream done by Matt, Dell, and Intel, and I think I'm going to talk more about that on Friday. I hope that by Friday we actually have the live stream, the recording of the live stream, on YouTube, and then can then also share it with you guys and discuss it. I think before I go into the AMA, I want to talk a little bit about transparency, because I think for a project that has been around since the very early days, right, 2015, I think it's important that we talk about transparency, because transparency is what makes and breaks these crypto communities. And I think it's important that all of you understand that the main reason why we are actually doing these AMAs, why we're doing these videos, webinars, it's really primarily to really show you the progress that we're making, and also to be really transparent about certain topics, because the only way that we can succeed as a distributed ledger technology, but even more importantly, how we can succeed as an open ecosystem, is if we are fully transparent and fully in alignment with the community and with the ecosystem around IOTA, right? That is what makes open source so great, because everybody can look at the code, can find any faults, can find any bugs in there, and can make a correction. And the same should actually be true on a governance level, right? Just because we are the founders of the project, just because we are the IOTA Foundation, just because we are the core developers of the project, it still means that we have to abide to a certain standard, and we also have to really be transparent in terms of what's happening, and to answer questions that the community might have, right? And in that spirit, right, we really want to continue down that path. And if you have any suggestions, if you have any questions, just always feel free to reach out to us, right? I think one of the major benefits that we as a project have is that we have gone through all of these problems, through all of these difficulties, through all of these stupid mistakes that we made over the last few years, right? We've been through everything, and now we're really at the stage where we as a project, we as a foundation, and also we as people have really matured a lot. And exactly as such, I'm much more confident than ever that we are really leading this project to its success. And that's also why we've made this decision to really try and do more rather than less in terms of content that we produce, and also really in terms of the engagement that we offer to you guys. So I think you can expect more in regards to that. And we're also going to maybe even have community members coming onto the show. So I think that will be very exciting. And without further ado, let me share my screen so we can talk about the AMA. Great. So one thing to keep in mind is I think every Thursday or so we announce this. So if you have questions, just go on Reddit and ask your question, and then I'll answer it. And sometimes if there's some questions that I can't answer, I'll try and loop in some team members so that we can maybe answer them on the IOTA Talks on Friday. And by the way, just so you know, like, all of this is unfiltered, and I've actually never seen this before. So let's start with the first question. Hey Dom, can you tell us something about the partnership between Fetch AI and Bosch? I know they are in Mobi as well, and this seems to be interesting. I looked at it and I think it's really amazing. So congrats to Fetch AI on working with Bosch. I think they've made some great progress over the last few years. So I'm really happy for the guys there, or for the team there, for achieving that. I think many people have to understand, like, there's no monopoly in that regard, right? Just because we had an announcement with a big company 3 years ago doesn't mean that now, because they're working with another company, startup in this blockchain space, they're no longer working with us or stuff like that, right? the way that enterprises work is that they have big innovation labs, and in those innovation labs, they want to experiment. They want to figure out what works and what doesn't, right? And so we, as a project, we have to assist them in that. And we also have to give them the freedom to make these decisions, right? Those are multinational companies with 30, 50,000 employees oftentimes, right? I think in that regard, great success for Fetch. I think for us, the goal as a project should be to be that good that Fetch is, as a decentralized application, is actually building on top of IOTA, because I don't think we're really competing with them. I think they're really doing some great work in their own domain. And rather than this being us versus them, it should rather be us focusing on building a bridge towards them, so that they utilize our IOTA oracles, so that they utilize tokenized assets, so that they utilize the IOTA ledger as the backbone for their application. I think that will really be the focus over the next few months as we really mature with Chrysalis and everything else. So yeah, I think it's great news. And Mobi is obviously a great alliance where we can also do some of this co-creation. Last month, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency published a letter clarifying that federally chartered banks and thrifts may participate in independent node verification networks and use stable coins for payment activities. Man, that's a mouthful. And with the release of digital assets and the partnership with custody providers like Curve, do you think banks and financial institutions in the US and EU will start issuing fiat stablecoins in IOTA in the future? So maybe just to take a step back to discuss IOTA tokenized assets, right? Our digital assets framework. The way that it works is, or the way that it's going to work is that you basically have one IOTA token and you decide what this IOTA token represents. Now, it can be a digital art piece, it can be an NFT, it can be a stable coin reserves, right? Fiat reserves, it can be gold, it can be any kind of metal, whatever you want it to be, right? What we focus on is this coloring component, so that it's basically secure, and every time you send this token to somebody else, they know what this token represents. That is what we fundamentally focus on the protocol level on IOTA, right? This minting of tokens and transferring them in a secure way. So every digital asset that you launch on IOTA is basically as secure, has the same type of features, scalability, and fungibility as the IOTA token itself, right? That's really great. Now, when it comes to stable coins, you could do a very simple scheme where you, for example, let's speak hypothetically that I have a new startup and I'm a regulated startup, so I have an e-money license in Europe. Now, this e-money license actually allows me to take deposits from end users, similarly to a bank. And now what I can do with these deposits is I can do a one-to-one mapping on the IOTA ledger and say like, hey, every dollar, every euro that's deposited in our bank account is also available as one euro token on the IOTA ledger, right? That's a very simple setup, and that's possible. Now, when it comes to stablecoins, though, I would say that they have much more stringent and also more, I think, more complex regulatory requirements in terms of doing blacklisting, reversals, whitelists, and being able to do KYC verification and all of that, right? So there's an entry barrier, a high entry barrier. And that also means that in order to launch a stablecoin on IOTA, we need to provide the functionality to do that. And that's exactly what we're doing with smart contracts. Because we kind of have this interesting situation where we want the IOTA protocol to be functional complete, to offer these amazing use cases, but at the same time, it has to be light. The protocol has to be lightweight, so that the computational efforts for confirming transactions is not high, right? Like that's always been sort of our differentiation between Ethereum, because Ethereum is packing everything into its fat protocol, right? Everything is in one protocol, and because of that, it has these scalability issues. Now with IOTA, we focus on this modular approach, and I'm very certain that with IOTA smart contracts, we're actually going to be seeing stable coins launched on top of IOTA. And what's exciting about that is now if you have a stablecoin in IOTA, in this ecosystem, you can actually start utilizing it for smart contracts as well, right? Because it's a tokenized, it's a digital asset. It can be transferred around in this IOTA economy. And so in that regard, we're already having some discussions about that. And I'm very certain that with smart contracts, we're going to see for some fiat stablecoins launch on IOTA. Maybe also something interesting, right? There's like collateral-backed stablecoins, and there's algorithmic stablecoins. You can do both on IOTA. And algorithmic stablecoins are like Maker, for example, MakerDAO. And collateral-backed stablecoins are like Tether, USDC, right? But you can do both on IOTA. I guess this is not that relevant. For someone like myself who doesn't come from technical background, what can I do to help the project? That's a very good question, and I appreciate you asking that question. I think when we look at IOTA, what makes us so great is it's not just about a singular aspect of the protocol, right? It's not just IOTA in supply chain. It's not just IOTA in smart cities. It's about all of these different things. And the only way that we can grow as an ecosystem is to really have great minds join our ecosystem and to think about where does it make sense to apply IOTA in the real world or even in the digital world, right? It's about having this thinking around the use cases, around the potential, and to also then realize this potential. And so I think everybody who is not too technical, I can highly recommend you to first of all read up on IOTA, what it does and what it doesn't, and then to really also start thinking about the future that it enables and which kind of future that you want to be part of creating, right? We are a permissionless ecosystem, and our role at the IOTA Foundation is to empower all of you to be productive with our technologies and to build amazing stuff on top of it, right? And I think with that, make sure to join our Discord and participate in the discussions there and be part of the community. I think all that's already hugely helpful, and it's just amazing to participate in these discussions with all of you. So yeah, make sure to join the community, make sure to read up on IOTA, and then in the next phase, make sure to build something with it. And even if you're not technical enough, there's always somebody in the community that is technical enough, but that lacks the ideas or the project description. So it's all about coming together and mashing out new ideas and delivering on them, right? Can you give an update on the Ethereum bridge? Could the technology behind this bridge also connect other DLTs to IOTA in the future? So there's different levels of bridges. The first one, which will be to allow the IOTA asset to be represented in Ethereum, so like wrapping, is already underway. And the Curve announcement last week was actually quite important in that regard, because many of these wrapping providers, if you can call them, they need a custodian to hold the assets, right? And so Curve is one of those key custodians that actually enables that. So in that regard, we're moving full steam ahead. The other one, which is this more technical bridge where you can actually transfer assets from Ethereum to IOTA as well, is in development. As you can see, we're sort of putting the puzzle pieces together, starting with digital assets, the digital assets framework, and now with smart contracts. Once we have smart contracts on IOTA, we can actually really start doing these atomic swaps between Ethereum and IOTA. I can't give you any concrete time frame yet, but obviously this is a high priority, and we're really moving in the right direction there. So now we have digital assets. The next step is smart contracts, and then we can do the bridge publicly. Could the technology behind this bridge also connect other DLTs to IOTA in the future? Yeah, absolutely. Like that's really the main goal, to make IOTA really this multi-asset network where we can do this cross-chain, cross-stack, also asset transfers. And that's really what we're focused on. And that's also what I mean when I always say, hey, we are building bridges towards other ecosystems. Can you talk about the benefits of coloring native tokens as opposed to generating tokens out of thin air like ERC20? It's a very good question. Now, if you think about an ERC20 token, right, there's always a difference between an asset being on a layer above the native asset, right? So the native asset in IOTA is the IOTA token. The IOTA token has the maximum security. Like everything that we're doing in terms of the research, the development around IOTA is to make sure that one IOTA token cannot be double spent, right? So one IOTA token is as secure as 1 million IOTA tokens and 1 trillion IOTA tokens. They all have the same level of security. And the same is then true with digital assets, right? If I color an IOTA token, it has the same properties as the native asset, as the native IOTA token. So it's as scalable and it's as no feeless, right? It's as feeless as the IOTA token, and it's as secure as the IOTA token, right? Now, if we think about smart contracts in IOTA, you can think about it like a blockchain that runs on top of the DAG structure. Basically, we have a smart contract that is, for example, in ERC20. In this ERC20, I have a bunch of balances and account holders. And as such, the ledger state is stored within the smart contract and is secured by the IOTA ledger, right? Now, if I want to transfer, I first have to go through the layer 1 in order to confirm this sort of action within the smart contract, and only then the transfer is being made. The other big disadvantage is that these assets are sort of only represented within this enclosed environment, which is this smart contract or the singular virtual machine that runs on top of IOTA. Now, if we want to transfer it over to other smart contracts, we need to figure out a way to do that, right? And that's exactly where digital assets come into place again, because now you can transfer assets between the different smart contract chains by leveraging the IOTA tangent, by leveraging the IOTA token. So the best example, the next best explanation that I can give you is that these ERC20 tokens that launch on top of IOTA, they will be encapsulated in their own sort of environment. And in order to transfer them over to other smart contract chains, they actually need to utilize IOTA as this interoperability layer, right? So again, they're touching digital assets. The big benefit is that these tokens have, though, is the programmability, right? If I have a smart contract, I have infinite possibilities what I can do with these assets now. I can do bonding curves, I can do inflation, I can do complex rights management, access management within this token ecosystem. And that's what makes it so exciting, right? Because now you can leverage both benefits. You can actually deposit an IOTA colored coin, deposit it into the smart contract, and then within this ecosystem, you can do with it whatever you want, right? You can program it in whatever way you want, but you can still leave the ecosystem if you want to transfer this asset to another smart contract chain. All of this we're going to explain in much greater detail as we move along and as we release smart contracts soon, so that you guys can also understand and what's going on there. Can you talk about how we can make sure that private keys on devices aren't compromised? For example, the manufacturer of sensor device using the private key to send garbage data to the Tangle for payments. I think that's exactly what we're trying to achieve with Project Ethereum and also with Stronghold. So I can highly recommend you to actually listen to the previous IOTA Talks and to also check up on Project Ethereum. Is the IOTA Foundation still working with Bosch and or Volkswagen? If not, are they still relatively interested in potentially using the technology in the future? We directly at the IOTA Foundation are not tied to these companies, so we don't have any active project with them. And I think I've said this previously as well. They're still involved in the ecosystem. For example, Bosch is involved with their device manufacturer, their Bosch XDK. So we had some exciting projects with them. I think as with all of these projects, I think in 2017, 2018, they were really excited about the technologies, but oftentimes decisions are made by upper management to deprioritize and focus on different things. And I think there's two type of companies. Like some of them focus more on permission blockchains, and others really just waited for the entire space to mature more. And I think especially this year, more of these companies are also reaching out to us, as we saw with the Project Alvarium live stream right now, where there were like 1,200 people just in the live stream, with like, and people that are really part of some big companies. And so I think this year, as the technology is more mature, they'll definitely start looking at IOTA again and work with us. But I think it's important to keep in mind that we, as the IOTA Foundation, we are not a singular entity, right? In this ecosystem, there's many different players in the IOTA ecosystem, and there's nothing better in terms of our adoption if we don't know about something, right? If somebody is using IOTA without our involvement, like that's absolutely amazing, and that really means that we are doing a great job with the documentation and with the tech itself. And we're seeing more and more about that, like that. Hi, Dom. I've been following the project for years now, and I'm really excited about what has come out of it. What have been the biggest challenges for you personally in recent years, and what are you currently struggling with? I work in a very fast-changing field myself. How do you manage not to lose your spirit, your focus, and your incentive with so many new employees? That's a good question. Kind of puts me on the spot. I think the biggest challenge for me was, like, if you start a project like IOTA as one of the founders, you're really so damn emotionally invested into it, so that it's sometimes difficult to be criticized, to have others hurt your ego by saying, no, this doesn't work, that doesn't work, right? So you also need to mature as a person in terms of its perception of what is true and what is not true. And I think the most difficult years for me was definitely 2018. Because that was sort of the year where I had to truly re-find my purpose and re-find myself. Because, you know, like being in crypto, you go from $0 in asset towards insane amounts, and you can't even like realize it because it's all in tokens. And so you constantly think like, is it real? Is it not real? Right? And so 2018 was sort of this most terrible year for me, but luckily, I got more stability in my personal life by finding a great anchor, which is my girlfriend, obviously, who is really helping me stay sane and stay stable. And I think also I really started to understand more about what my role is, right? And my role is to help lead the organization, to help build up the structure so that our amazing people in the IOTA Foundation have the best possible work environment to flourish in, right? And I started focusing a lot more on that. And I think the other important thing is also to really make sure that you don't that you have the right environment for yourself, right? Eating healthy, exercising, all the usual stuff. On like sleeping enough, right? All of that is really important to stay sane in this environment, and also not drinking or doing other substances. I think that's an important life tip in that regard. And how do you manage to not lose your spirit? I'm going to be honest, right? Like IOTA, we really went through this insane roller coaster with the project, but what really sort of like why we're so different from other projects is because we're hustling towards the top, right? We never give up, and no matter how hard it hits us in the face, we always continue going. And I think this is really a spirit that we have in the entire foundation. Like everybody that's part of the foundation knows that we do not give up, because we have a real vision and we have a real mission ahead of us. And like every day waking up is an exciting challenge, right? Because you have new problems to solve, new problems to think about, and it's just amazing to work with the team at the IOTA Foundation, but also work with the IOTA community. So I couldn't imagine myself doing anything else, because I think anything else would be too boring for me. So in that regard, I think I kind of found the perfect spot, and I'm very excited for what is to come. Yeah. How much do you expect between the launch of Chrysalis and when partners begin using the Tangle? We already have partners using the Tangle right now. Like we saw the Dell Intel stuff with Project Ethereum today. We saw the Zebra Technologies Vaccine Passport. Today we have Uberge. Just some recent examples, right? And there's a lot more going to happen, especially because of Chrysalis. It's not like we flip a switch and then it happens, right? The cycle of these companies is that it takes time for them to understand the changes, the impact of these changes, and then to also think about what they can work on. We already right now, obviously, constantly talking with big companies to utilize IOTA. I think what's most exciting about Chrysalis is that we will finally be able to see more tangible adoption. And what I mean with that is that you will be able to utilize the IOTA token for certain use cases, right? Oracles, staking, lending, borrowing, all of that, right? You can actually utilize it and in new ways. I mean, and we're also going to see much more crypto-focused applications like smart contracts, right? And I think Chrysalis is the enabler of all of that. So it's a huge stepping stone. And when we switch from the current network to from the current Watts network, and when we turn on the Chrysalis network in that regard, it's not going to be like night and day kind of difference in terms of the adoption, but it's slowly progressing towards a huge ecosystem around IOTA. And that's really what these changes were meant for, right? What is your prediction about IOTA's future in terms of when do you think this network is going to be in daily use in Industry 4.0? Is it realistic to achieve this in the next 5 years? I get this question quite often. I think within the next 5 years is definitely our goal. I think especially some key industries like supply chain, or as we see in some also like data use cases, like for example, oracles. I definitely think that within the next 5 years is easily possible. Bigger use cases are really all around this machine economy where we have machines trading with each other, because there you have these very complex ecosystems with multiple parties involved that are also competing with us and competing with others. So I think there the goal is definitely that we have the IOTA token being adopted as this infrastructure layer and that enables these use cases for those big companies. And I think from the looks of it, more companies are really opening up to the token, especially because of what happened with Tesla and so on. And so our job at the IOTA Foundation is to make sure that the protocol is production ready, and the protocol is definitely going to be production ready over the next year, right? Considering all of the progress and all of the changes that are being made. And I think the rest is really then also up to these big companies to go from POC towards a minimum viable product, towards a minimum viable ecosystem, towards a real product, right? And I think 5 years is a good timeline that we should look at. But aside from all the real world adoption, I think what's equally exciting this year will be everything that we can do in the crypto ecosystem. And smart contracts and digital assets is really going to accelerate that as well. Hi, Dom, take this opportunity to have a sip of water. All right, I'm gonna follow your advice. All this talking can really dry out your mouth. How will the Tangle be managed once Corticide is complete? What if some major flaw is discovered 5 years after its release? Very good question. What's important to keep in mind is the way that IOTA is going to be managed in the future is similarly to where basically all of the nodes in the network have to upgrade, right? And if they make the upgrade, these software problems can be resolved, right? It's sort of like it's this decentralized network, and as long as you can actually ensure that the network is able to upgrade, I think these flaws can be more easily mitigated. as long as they're not really critical consensus flaws, right? I think if there's a critical consensus flaw, what's probably going to happen is that there's not going to be any confirmations, or that nodes are going to go offline, right? What we have to make sure of as the IOTA Foundation is obviously that there's never a double spend. And that's really what the Coordicide research over the last few years, all of the peer review and all of the upcoming testing is all about, right? If there's a major flaw that's going to be discovered in 5 years that enables somebody to practically do a double spend, and we as the foundation have failed in our research, right? And that's exactly what we're here to prevent. That's exactly what we're here to solve by making these complicated math equations and publishing papers on our solution, getting it peer reviewed, right? So with that, we have to be absolutely confident in IOTA and in Coordicide. Now, one thing that we're definitely starting to think more about is sort of governance around the protocol. Like, how can we actually make it possible to easily upgrade the protocol if there are changes? And so there's some interesting discussions there on how we can do that with Mana, and how we can actually like integrate that into the protocol on layer 1. We could do it on layer 2 as smart contracts, but then you cannot do automatically these upgrades. But we're definitely thinking a lot about governance. And for one, we're doing more traditional governance with the Eclipse Foundation, with the Linux Foundation, but we also have to do this decentralized governance with making it possible for the node operators, but also the token holders to make certain decisions. So you can expect more in that in the near future. Obviously, right now, the focus will be on launching this incentivized testnet, and there we can also have a sort of playground to think about or work on these interesting ideas. Do we need a node? And by the way, thanks for the advice to drink. Do we need a node to be able to sell rent Mana, or are we going to be able to do that straight from the Firefly wallet? Everything that has to do with Mana, our goal is to make it as simple as possible for anybody to participate. So we are here to lower the entry barrier. And so, yeah, you'll definitely be able to do it within the Firefly wallet as well. Hey, Dom, have you guys been talking internally about the coin split? It is not unthinkable that the price of IOTA goes to pretty ridiculous heights over the next 10 to 15 years. This would make a lot of use cases on digital assets unusable. And postponing it will make it harder to do this as IOTA gets more adoption, being a decentralized protocol and all. Also, I'm not even sure it's a possibility when we have digital assets in a wallet. What would happen to a concert ticket when you split the underlying IOTA token? Splitting is definitely an interesting topic that we're thinking about. As I mentioned previously, this is gonna be a governance vote as well for the community to make a decision on whether this makes sense or not. I definitely think that Coordicide would be the perfect moment to do something like that. But it's important to keep in mind that fundamentally for the user, nothing will change, right? It's still going to be 1 MI, 1 GI, 1 TI, and so on and so forth. But it's basically going to be commas behind it. And this is something we think about. And it's an interesting UX UI problem as well on how we can do it. But definitely, right, we're thinking about these topics already now in light of Coordicide. And maybe when we launch the incentivized testnet, we can launch it with a different denomination for the IOTA tokens. But before you guys take what I said with the wrong in the wrong way, just make sure that like this is not an actual problem right now. And once we have more clarity on what the approach will be, we'll definitely loop you guys in and explain how it's going to work. But for the end user, not much will change. That's the main objective, right? And by the way, also those, like, just to really make sure I get this right? What a coin split is, like, it's not just adding new tokens and then diluting the rest. It's like, let's say that you have 1 token today, and with the coin split, instead of 1, you have 1,000 tokens now, right? So everybody has this 1 to 1,000 increase. And what it then allows you to do is to really have even smaller decimal or like smaller units that you can utilize for tokenized assets, that you can utilize for micropayments and so on. All right, this really sparked a very interesting discussion here. Let me maybe. Oh no. Well, if you guys have some topics that you want to discuss, just make sure to, like, I think discussions like these, if you really want us to engage there, I would go on the IOTA Cafe. So just FYI, for those who are not aware of it, IOTA Cafe is our research forum, sort of. Like, we publish all of our ideas here, we brainstorm around things. And basically all of the Chrysalis work was worked on over the last few months on here, where we had some very insightful discussions. And I think if one of you has a proposal, please post it here in the IOTA Cafe, and then we can have a discussion on how it can look like. And then once that is completed, it will be an official RFC, and then it will be on the Corticide testnet to test it out. Will there be a mechanism or some kind of curation so people can figure out what the real Volkswagen colored coin, colored IOTA, is next to the 1000 scam CI? What do you mean with CI? Oh, got it. That will be created for sure, since the name itself is not unique and comparing the hashes could lead to human errors. I'm not sure if this is even a real attack vector, but I could imagine corporates will not like to see coins with their brand name. I was just thinking about the fake smart contract coins like Dogecoin on the Ethereum network. It's a very good question. And the beauty of what we are doing is that through cryptography, you can verify data, you can verify hashes. And it's like when you have an NFT art piece, right? How do you actually determine that it's not a fake? From my understanding, and I'm sure that our engineers also have different ideas here, is that you would basically have to publish the original identity of this entity, like for example, Volkswagen in this case, where they have their ID known, and then with that public key, you can verify these other digital assets that are issued by them, right? Similarly to an NFT art piece where I'm an artist, I publish my key, public keys, and now with this public key, others can verify if an art piece is legitimate or not. The way that I think this is going to work with digital assets is that we'll have this token foundry where these asset creators and these assets are actually listed, right? So it's like a decentralized marketplace, you can think about it. And where the assets listed there, they will have a verification status, right? This is a legitimate asset and is not a duplicate. There's always going to be cases where somebody tells you like, hey, I have the real Volkswagen coin. But that is exactly where then Firefly comes into place, because a wallet like Firefly can verify easily the data that it gets. I can actually check, hey, this coin has been faked. And human error cannot be avoided, right? But that's exactly what we have the machines for. So just to summarize, very interesting problem, but it also has some simple solutions. Ooh, this is a long one. Dom, a question about ISCP. With Ethereum and essentially all other smart contract platforms, if you review the code and deem it safe, you have essentially absolute certainty that it is truly unstoppable code. Every node on the network will enforce that the contract will execute exactly as coded, regardless of how the code's original author feels about the result. Am I wrong in saying that delegating the contract's author with node selection, while advantageous for smart contract execution costs and useful for permission groups and consortiums, will make auditing the immutability of smart contracts much more difficult? As error-prone as auditing smart contracts already is, I imagine the problem compounds exponentially when charging smart contract users with the additional responsibility of assessing the risk of foul play, unforeseen collusion by committees. Are these concerns tractable enough to securely implement ISCP with actual composability? It seems a Herculean, is that how you say it? Task building in interdependent contracts while simultaneously auditing third-party code and assessing node committee integrity. I wholly love the philosophy overall and think it's by far more practical, but I do have questions about its integrity in a permissionless context. Thanks. First of all, it's hard to read in front of you guys. It's such a long text. It's kind of funny. Good question. I'm trying to think about whether we should answer this now or when smart contracts are out. Just to quickly recap how IOTA smart contracts are going to work, and I'll try and keep it short and crisp, because smart contracts are coming out very soon. So all of you will have the architecture document, YouTube videos, and all of that to fully understand how it works. But the beauty of the IOTA Tangle is it is this DAG structure, right? Now, when we think about the smart contract, you need to really make sure that every state transition can be verified, and that there's no fork, right? And that there's no multiple truths. It's kind of a hard word as well after you speak so much, right? So that is why, if the way that we start with smart contracts is, we have colored coins. We have one colored coin that represents this smart contract, or the smart contract chain for that matter. And every time there is a command or there's a execution, right? Let's say, for example, I trigger a certain function in the smart contract. It gets executed by the committee, and I'll talk about the committee soon. The committee then publishes the result, or the result state, right? The mutated state in the IOTA ledger, transfers an IOTA token. Why? Because we want to make it unforkable, and the only thing that is unforkable in the IOTA ledger is the IOTA token itself. So this color coin gets transferred with the state transition itself. So that means that we have a secure smart contract chain. We have kind of a blockchain running on top of the IOTA Tangle. Now, the beauty of this is that it's incredibly secure, right? As secure as the IOTA token again. We are able to verify each state transition. So somebody new coming in can actually make sure what the current state of the smart contract is, and can verify every state transition, which is amazing, which is exactly what we want to do. And in addition to that, we can actually run smart contracts in parallel, right? That's the whole promise of ISCP, because we don't have the world computer. We don't envision the world computer, because we say that there's going to be dApp chains, right? So a very popular dApp, like for example, Uniswap, could be its own smart contract chain because it has such high demand, right? And as such, you actually just want to limit your scalability throughput not on the VM layer, but you want to limit it on the IOTA layer, right? So there's going to be dApp chains. There's going to be independent smart contracts. There's one smart contract running its own sort of chain. And then in addition to that, there can be like open chains where we have like the Ethereum virtual machine running on top of IOTA. So it's like Ethereum running on IOTA. Now, one key component that I left out are these committees. The way that these smart contracts are secured is through a committee that gets selected through some mechanism. It can either be a permissioned way where you have a bunch of companies coming together, making decisions, signing an agreement that they will be the validators, or it could be a permissionless open way where they're being selected through some mechanism, proof of stake, whatever, or not, sorry, not proof of stake, but through their staking, or through the stake that they have, or through a random mechanism, right? Whatever. But they're being selected in an open way. Now those committee members come together, they do some cryptography in order to generate the key and all of that, and now they are responsible for securing the smart contract, right? It could be 3 committee members, or it could be hundreds of committee members, right? It depends on how secure you want this chain to be. Now, I think an important point to keep in mind here is, right, we have the IOTA ledger, and now you have these smart contract chains on top of IOTA. Each smart contract chain will be sort of its own encapsulated network, where the committee members, but also sort of sentinel nodes in that network, form the peer-to-peer network. They constantly share the data of the state of the smart contract. So if you want to verify the validity of a smart contract, you either have to trust one of these nodes, or you participate yourself, you sync up with the network, and then you verify the state transition in a IOTA ledger, and it's the same as before. The same thing, by the way, not the same thing, but a similar thing is happening in Ethereum today, where it's kind of impossible to validate the latest state in Ethereum because I think the ledger size is too big and it's become kind of impossible to sync up with it in a reasonable manner. So you also have these other nodes that you kind of rely on to try and trust to give you the latest state. That's why Infura is so popular in Ethereum. And with IOCP, because we just focus on a singular smart contract or a singular dApp, it is much easier to sync up with the network and verify it. So you can much more easily deploy your own node and participate in the network. And obviously, just like there was like a quick rundown, but we're going to publish IOTA smart contracts very soon, so that everybody can also better understand how it's going to work and why it's such an amazing approach. And it's also very exciting because I truly think that we solve some real problems in the smart contract space. And I think it will be very exciting. And obviously, we are already thinking about how can we make a permissionless network out of these permissioned groups, so that you can run both permissioned smart contracts but also permissionless smart contracts in one setup, in one framework, while utilizing the IOTA ledger for this interoperability between them. So there's a lot more to expect with IOCP. I think that's TLDR. Is it actually TLD too long didn't watch? That's an interesting question. How hard would it be to once again make the network quantum resistant? The way that we are thinking about the IOTA 2.0 is to really make it modular, right? So you can actually plug in different consensus algorithms. You can also plug in different signature schemes. And we're definitely continuing to explore quantum resistance. And maybe we're also going to sponsor some projects, like groups, cryptographers that are working on this topic. And in the future, I think it will be as simple as plugging in a new library. And obviously there's some changes that need to be thought through, but that's sort of the vision, the way that we're thinking about this in the future. To have this modular node software, obviously then you need to think about the libraries, the wallet and all of that. But most important really is that the node software can be upgraded easily. And I think the Hornet and the B team have really done a great job there in making the node software very modular and also very maintainable in that regard. So the summary is it will be more easy. And this is definitely something that we will also consider in the future, these upgrades. I've seen some Siemens patents mentioning IOTA. Is there a plan to make IOTA as a possibility to access the Siemens Mindsphere? I think there's definitely, like anything is possible, right? We are a permissionless and open ecosystem. We are open source. You can adopt our technology and do with it whatever you want. I think the interesting part about IOTA is all of these big companies, they're really thinking about digital twins. And the digital twin is just really this representation of physical assets in the digital world, including data streams and also components of that machine. So IOTA is perfect for digital twins, right? Because you can secure the identity of the machine, including the components, specifications, but more importantly, you can also secure the data streams. And with our project Ethereum and with our industrial Oracle solution, we're really merging these different worlds together to make it much easier to also monetize machines, not just secure their data, but also monetize that. And as we progress in making IOTA production ready, we'll definitely talk a lot more with these sort of cloud providers for IoT, because they can really benefit a lot by integrating IOTA. Because the big problem that we have with some of these cloud IoT platforms is that we have all of these different walled gardens, right? So company X, Y, and Z have their own IoT platform. They're investing hundreds of millions of dollars to try and get it adopted. So they have salespeople running left and right. But now basically what's happening is that companies that adopt these IoT platforms, they're sort of integrated in this ecosystem, but they cannot transfer their data, or they cannot participate in the other ecosystems. And this is exactly where IOTA comes into play, because IOTA is this interoperability layer between these different cloud platforms and IoT platforms, right? Because data that is stored in the IOTA ledger is accessible on all of these different IoT cloud platforms. And because we are open source, because we are nonprofit, we have a very different incentive structure when it comes to the adoption of IOTA. So I think the discussion with Mindsphere and other platforms will be a lot easier. So I'm very excited for that. I think I'll do one more question. This time we're not going to do a YouTube AMA because it's kind of hard to do that. Wait, let me actually do this one. Hello, Dominik. I've heard about some possible applicability of IOTA in the realm of healthcare passports. To what extent would you consider something like 24/7 real-time heart rate monitoring a viable application on the Tangle? Would it be sufficient as a data layer on which the heart rate data would be sent to healthcare emergency services? For example, I think I can I understand your question. I think what we have to we have to define what the IOTA protocol is useful for. The IOTA protocol is not a data transport layer. You're not supposed to send data, massive amounts of data, through the IOTA Tangle. Now, if there's an application where you have many machines submitting data to a single source, there's much more efficient ways to actually make sure that the data is being kept secure, right? Symmetric cryptography is just being one of them, right? So an IoT device is shares its key with a gateway. The gateway gets the encrypted data from the device, can decrypt it, and can do with it whatever it wants, including putting the data on the Tangle, right? When it comes to putting heart rate monitoring and get that type of data on the Tangle, we have to ask ourselves, what is the benefit from data integrity? What use case do we achieve? Now, if there is some autonomous algorithm that relies on this data, you definitely want to use something like IOTA, right? Because you want to be able to verify that the data is real in order to make your decision. Anything that has to do with like this autonomous execution of actions, smart contracts, not just smart contracts, but any kind of IoT process, you want to be able to verify the data that you get, right? Because if you cannot verify it, you have a faulty process. We heard about garbage in and garbage out last week. Much worse is if the data is being tampered with in order to really severely impact processes, right? Automated processes in that regard. So if there's a certain process that relies on this data, you want to utilize the IOTA Tangle in order to make sure that it's verifiable and that it has not been tampered with, and you want to secure it at the source, right? I think in healthcare there's some very exciting use cases. Like one of the most exciting ones that we are working on right now is actually related to health, to sort of vaccination passports, where you have a claim. Like the claim is that you have been tested or that you have received the vaccine, and you now want to share this claim with a third party. And like this is a perfect use case for IOTA because we can A, ensure the data privacy of everyone, and B, we can actually make the data verifiable in a secure and encrypted way. So a third party doesn't have to trust you, but they know that because it's built on the IOTA Tangle, it's verifiable, right? And they can verify that through some cryptography that it has not been tampered with. And that is exactly where IOTA makes a ton of sense. Sorry that I couldn't read your entire question. I'll just do one more question and then I'll move forward. One of IOTA's old blog posts about the data marketplace was uploaded accidentally. Does the team still work on the data marketplace? As far as I can remember, you said at one point that it was up to the community to work on it. In 2017, it was one of the main reasons that got me interested in the project. It would be cool to know if the vision changed in that aspect or if I'm confusing something here. The data marketplaces are key to the machine economy, right? Every announcement or like every major announcement that we had this year has been about securing data and monetizing data. Perfect example has been data or IOTA oracles, right? Where we want to secure data from the source and we want to make this data accessible in IOTA so that it can be monetized or it can be shared with third parties. So data marketplaces are still key to our division of IOTA and this future, and we also saw that with Project Alvarium, right? And the data marketplace, it actually evolved from the 2017 implementation to this industry marketplace, And if you Google IOTA industry marketplace, you can actually see that. When it comes to data marketplaces, they're hugely complex, right? Because for one, you need identity, you need to secure the data from the source. And in addition to that, you need to build a marketplace. So you need to, for one, make sure that there's demand and that there's supply. And in addition to that, there's this whole question around pricing, right? What is your data worth? Today, there's some simpler setups where there's, for example, a subscription service. You just pay a certain amount of subscription to get access to data. But the vision of the future is to move away from subscriptions towards a system where you have this fine granular pricing of resources, including data. So we at the IOTA Foundation are focused on building these different components. Digital identity is hugely important and very exciting for all kinds of use cases, right? So that is already in sort of getting close to beta stage, like digital identity for machines, but also for humans. And that will be a key component for this. And with that, we can then also build, for example, a reputation system. And the other parts, like, for example, oracles, that's really moving towards an actual product. And with that, we can really build these data marketplaces. So yes, it's still very much part of the vision, and we're still actively working on all of that. And we as a IOTA Foundation, our main objective is to make IOTA production ready, but to also make these frameworks and also these use cases on top of IOTA really production ready, right? And I think we're clearly putting these different puzzle pieces together for this beautiful mosaic that will be the machine economy, and the machine economy that is built on and through IOTA, right? And the vision, mission, and also our drive is still the same. And I think especially this year, we have some very exciting, tangible adoption use cases that we're going to publish. So I think with that, we had a very exciting AMA session. If you have any other questions, feel free to join Discord. We are always accessible there, either in the general chat or in the speculation channel, where it can be a little bit more wild, to put it mildly. But without further ado, make sure to follow us on Twitter, follow us on YouTube, subscribe to us on YouTube. I'm trying to win an IOTA or a YouTube award for the IOTA Foundation, so we have to hit 100,000 subscribers. So let's make that happen. I'm gonna hang it on our office when we have one. But I think we have some very exciting stuff happening this week, and I'm going to see you guys on Friday, where we're going to take a review of the week and where we're going to talk about some very concrete progress and some very concrete announcement. With that, have a good evening and see you soon. Bye bye.